this next week, General Petraeus is going to release a report on how the surge is doing, and many people are speculating that it's going to be a very positive spin, and that's going to be backed up probably by journalists in the field in Iraq. Do you have much confidence in that report?
Absolutely not, no. I believe that General Petraeus is understanding the way that the military works, the reprisals for speaking out. If General Petraeus comes back to the Bush administration with a report that says the surge is not working, he will get a reprisal. If he doesn't directly get fired, he will be pressured into resigning, which has happened before. This wouldn't be the first time. In many ways, Colin Powell was pressured into resigning because he was one of the only people that first in the administration started saying, hey, this isn't right. We should, we can't find any weapons of mass destruction. I don't feel right that I argued that we should invade because there were weapons of mass destruction. I believe it's largely the same thing with the surge. I think the surge is another last-ditch effort for the Bush administration, really, to gain that rallying cry once again from the American people to back the war, so that they can keep getting the funding from Congress, so that they can have the support from the American people. But when it comes to the journalists that are embedded in Iraq, the way that it works is when you talk about private corporations within Iraq, they're not exempt from that inclusion. They're being paid by advertisement to be in that region. The Department of Defense,
so CNN, ABC, MSNBC.
All the major news outlets. Pretty much the only ones that, personally, from my experience that I've seen are like the Christian Science Monitor, the London Times, are one of the most neutral news outlets that you can actually get for the truth.
For American journalists, what do they face from the Department of Defense if they have a negative report about it?
Well, they're under contracts, and the Department of Defense learned from Vietnam that showing footage and stories about coffins being loaded on planes and all the deaths and all the death tolls and the unsuccessful aspect of the Vietnam War, the Department of Defense really learned how quickly the American people started to shift their perception of the war. And one of the biggest things you learn is that you cannot fight a war without the morale of your people. So what they're doing is they're placing these contracts on CNN, on Fox News, on ABC, CBS, all of these major news outlets, that basically they cannot report things without going through this stringent chain of command to get approval for it. So what you're getting from major news outlets is not the truth in Iraq. You're getting little bits and pieces of the truth, and everything that goes through a filter through the Department of Defense. And those journalists, if those journalists report something that they're not supposed to, if they go to the bathroom and report that the latrine is dirty without asking for permission, they could lose that contract. Thus, CNN will fire them, and they don't want to do that. They, A, lose a job, and CNN loses money, and they're not allowed to send another journalist to Iraq. So, really, it's hand in hand, the fact that General Petraeus is going to say that, and the media is going to back it, because they know that that's all they can do to keep getting paid.
And that's why documentaries like Baghdad ER, which I recommend to everyone to watch, are few and far between from the majority of the reporting coming out. And the only people that really are hearing the truth are talking to people that are actually been there as veterans, who have seen the conditions on the ground and know that morale and the mission is kind of, well, haphazard at best.
Right. I've never personally seen Baghdad ER just because it'd be a little difficult for me to watch. But I do recommend a film called The Ground Truth. It's a video of soldiers that have returned. Many of them are Iraq veterans against the war, members of Iraq veterans against the war. And they talk about all the different things from the time that they've been recruited and they enlist up to the time that they return home. They talk about the alienation, the struggle with the VA for post-traumatic stress counseling, the depleted uranium issues that the Department of Defense is completely ignoring. Those are great documentaries. Really, alternative news sources are going to be found in the form of documentaries and certain news outlets, and people are really going to have to go out of their way, because CNN, Fox News, they become entertainment news outlets, not actual investigative journalists. They're entertainment news. They report things that are not true.
Well, I'm glad that you're here tonight, and for people like Colin Powell, former Secretary of State Colin Powell, Schwarzkopf, all the generals that resigned at the beginning of the Iraq War, I would like to personally appeal to you to be vocal in your letters to the editor, in the policy briefs that you write, to be very firm in opposing the fallacy of the surge being a success. And you generals in the field that have retired and have worked alongside the administration that have been forced out or have had to retire, the people of America want you to stand up and deliver your message to the people, because right now the White House is ignoring all logic and common sense, and many feel that they are going to use the same tactics they used to go to Iraq to escalate into another region of conflict, such as Iran, or continue this war beyond all necessary purposes.
I don't mean to interject, but with going with what you're saying, I believe too that many Iraq veterans need more higher-ranking officers to come out against this war, because sometimes we struggle with that feeling of alienation. It's a very tough road to get to, a very tough kind of boundary to cross, where you're speaking out against a war that you signed up and you fought in. It's nice to have higher-ranking officials, higher-ranking in the administration and within the military ranks, like General Baptiste, who has spoken out repeatedly against this war and the Bush administration's policy. It helps us feel like, you know, as a younger adult, which most of us are, it's nice to have career military personnel who are saying, look, this is not working. Even if they don't completely follow IVAW's kind of strategy or belief system, it's nice to have somebody who comes out and says, look, this is not working. Everything that we've thrown into this, all the effort, it's killing our military, it's ruining our chances of homeland security, which was really what the war on terrorism was about, and it's hurting our ability to deal with natural disasters such as Hurricane Katrina. So I think that going along with what you're saying, having those higher-ranking officials come out, I really urge them to do so.
Well, my guest tonight's been Jared Hood, the Rocky Mount Regional Director for IVAW, Iraq Veterans Against the War. He's just returned from the National Conference in St. Louis, Missouri. I hope you enjoy some of the interviews and clips that he has filmed there for us. Jared, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you very much, Wade.
This is UP News. I'm Wade Norris, your host, reporting live in Denver, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.